All right, good morning. Welcome to our June meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority. Do we have any citizens to be heard? I will mention that the MAPS committee, MAPS 3, is doing a tour of the maintenance facility for the streetcar at 10:30 if we get through in time and any of the trustees would like to go on the tour. But at some future point, I'm sure we'll have a tour after the facility's finished and be able to see it. So, all right, we have minutes from our May meeting. Any changes by any of the trustees? And if not, I'd have a motion to approve. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Then we also have minutes from our parking committee meeting on May 8th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then we also have our meeting from Transportation and Finance Committee meeting, which was yesterday, and those minutes were put at your location. So if you've had a chance to review those and there are no changes, then I'd have a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our consent docket, we've got 6 items. I don't know, do any of the trustees have any questions? I don't know, did you want to make mention on item E, or were you going to make them?
The Republic item.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just as an information item, we did enter into an agreement with Republic Parking Systems to extend the current contract. As you'll recall, the board authorized negotiations for the new contract, and those negotiations are not quite wrapped up, although we're very close, and we anticipate hopefully bringing a contract for consideration to the Cotpa Board of Trustees next month for that next contract. You'll notice the item actually extends the contract for 6 months. We don't anticipate it taking near that long, but of course with that amount of time it does give us a lot of flexibility.
All right, thank you. Any questions on any of the 6 items? Then I would have a motion to approve our consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Items for individual consideration. Item A is a contract with Herzog Transit Services for the operation and maintenance of the Oklahoma City streetcar system. The Transportation Committee meeting yesterday, we had a good presentation on all the areas of the contract, and the majority of the trustees were there, but Jason, if you'd like to comment any at all on it before we vote.
Sure, I'd be pleased to comment. We are, as staff, certainly pleased to present this contract to the Board of Trustees for consideration. The authorization and approval of this contract really marks a milestone for us in a couple of ways. I think a milestone for us as a city in terms of bringing a MAPS 3 project further and closer to completion and operation. But then even as the city's public transit provider, it marks a milestone for us in adding and getting closer to adding a new mode of transportation, which certainly aligns to and is one of the goals of our strategic business plan in the areas of meeting community expectations and developing service and sustainable service growth. So certainly is a milestone for us. We're pleased to present this contract for consideration. As the chairman had mentioned, we had a lengthy discussion and presentation yesterday during the Transportation Committee. The Transportation Committee moved and approved this contract for consideration to the trustees. The Finance Committee also convened and met and approved this contract for consideration for the trustees. So one thing I would like to mention is just to recognize our negotiating team. We had Embark staff, of course, part of that negotiating team. We had some of our consultants that you're familiar with, SOJ and Jenkins RTS. The Municipal Counselor's Office was a huge help in working through this contract, and our contract partner, Herzog Transit Services, which was very good to work with through this process, and appreciate Norm Jester from Herzog being here with us today. So very good to see you, sir. So with that, again, we spent a lot of time going through kind of the details and the overview of the contract. The memo before you kind of outlines the basics, and as you can see, we entered into negotiations. Actually, we received authorization to enter into negotiations in November. We began our negotiations in December. We wrapped up negotiations last month, and you can see the terms of the agreement. Essentially, it's a 6-year agreement, beginning with a phased-in approach in terms of costs. You can see our costs on the second page of the memo are divided out by fiscal year. So our first fiscal year of startup, estimated costs around $570,000. And then as we move into full revenue service, our first full year of revenue service is estimated to be around 3.2. And then you can see it gradually escalates through the life of the contract. There is a 5-year renewal option with approval of this contract. And with that, I will be glad to answer any questions.
All right, any questions of any of the trustees? I think we had a good discussion in our committee meetings, so most of the trustees are very familiar with all that. So I would have a motion to approve item A of our individual consideration.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Item B and C, we need to take a roll call vote and move these to the end of our docket, and then we'll get through our program reports and financial reports. So can we vote on them together, item B and C? No. Okay, item B, you start down at this end. Huh? Oh, a motion, okay.
I move we move item B to the appeal of the docket. Second. Yes.
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 All right. Then item C, we need a motion.
Move item C be moved to the heel of the docket.
Second. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. Our next item is in our financial reports is our ratification in claims and payroll. Any questions by any of the trustees on that particular report? If not, I would have a motion to ratify our claims and payroll. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our financial reports are Cotpa schedule of revenue and expenditures, budget to actual for the 10 months ended April 30th. Jason, if you have any comments on that.
Sure. I have a few comments on the financials, and then also as an information item, the interim financial statement for the Cotpa pension is also included in your packet. My talking points will be related to the budget to actual report through 10 months ending April 30th, 2017. So if we look at page 2, these are our transit operations division expenses and revenues. A couple of things to point out. If you look at the operating revenues, we have a couple of outliers there that I wanted to bring to your attention. First revenue source is the federal grant revenue. You'll notice that it is showing to be about $744,000 under what we had projected. And again, this is, as we know, we monitor this revenue closely throughout the year. There are months when we're a little bit behind our estimate. There's been a couple of times when we've caught up and been right in line with our estimate. The way it's shaping up is in terms of finishing up the fiscal year, it does look like we're going to finish the year under budget on our expenses. You can see that reflected in the operating expenditures at the bottom of the report. And so when we're under budget on our operating expenditures, of course, that means there's less expenses that we are reimbursed for, which causes that fluctuation in that federal grant revenue. So there are a couple of things that we anticipate drawing on by the end of the year that are not included in the numbers through April. For example, we did have a reimbursement draw of about $600,000 for May. So we're still going to receive reimbursement revenue, but our projections are showing us to be potentially about $500,000 under by the end of the year. But again, it's just a matter of not having the expenses to seek reimbursement for, and we're certainly not leaving any grant revenue on the table in any way, shape, or form. So the other outlier there is the City of Oklahoma City's general fund subsidy. This is one we've talked about as well, with our expenses coming in under budget and knowing the overall pressures on the city's general fund this fiscal year. Any savings we can have on our expenditures, and in the event we don't require that full subsidy, we're really trying to dial that back as far as we can and really just draw on what we need to support our expenses. So again, looking ahead to the end of the year, that number is likely going to grow. So although we're $450,000 under budget through 10 months, that number will likely get larger as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. Looking at total operating expenditures, wanted to point out our other services and fees category. We are about $23,000 over budget. This is an improvement from the previous, actually several months, where we were running about 10% over budget. So some of the expenses have kind of caught up to where we thought they would, where we thought they would be in terms of planning our budget. And then also some of the expenses in this category have just simply slowed down. So overall, our operating income has exceeded our operating revenues exceeded our operating expenditures by about $157,000. But again, I just caution that as we move through closer to the end of the fiscal year, that number will likely decline as we receive less transfer from the general fund. So moving on to page 3, these are our parking operations. Not a lot has changed since the last report we looked at in terms of revenues and expenditures compared to budget. We continue to see some shortfalls in our monthly contract revenue and our event revenue. Part of that is offset by better than expected transient parker revenue. To date, our total operating revenues are about 97% of the budget. That's up just slightly from where we were last month, but still under our target by about $189,000. I'm looking at our operating expenditures. Overall, we're at about 90% of the budget. I will mention that the savings you see in the parking garage operations line, showing that we're about $441,000 under budget, that does reflect, basically there's one Republic invoice that is not reflected in these numbers. So you really have to cut that surplus by about half. So moving on down to our total operating surplus, you can see that operating revenues exceed expenditures by about $3.3 million through 10 months of the fiscal year. Moving on to page 4, this is our river cruises operation, and as you know, service resumed in April, and when you look at the budget to actuals, you'll see very little change in terms of percent of revenues and expenses compared to budget, but I am pleased to report that looking at the operating revenues, we've generated about an additional $10,000 in revenue with the start of the season. Our general fare revenue, our charter revenue, and our concessions revenue have all increased since the last report that was presented. Operating expenditures continue to be right on budget, leaving a operating income of $160,969. Again, as we move closer to the end of the fiscal year, knowing that we've drawn our entire general fund subsidy for the river operations, that surplus will shrink. Looking at bike share operations, again, operating revenues are about 70%, or I should say 72% of what we had anticipated. That's down a little bit from where we were last month, but again, the big shortfall there is just sponsorships coming in less than what we had budgeted. That results in operating expenditures of being about 90% of what we had projected. Keeping in mind, we continue to hold off on the payment to the Transit Cash Fund for some of the personnel expenses related to managing the Spokies Bike Share program. We're doing that to offset the shortfall in the bike share sponsorship revenue. So with that, we have revenues in excess of expenditures of about $27,000 through 10 months of the fiscal year. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any other questions about the financials.
All right, any questions? Then I'd have a motion to receive our financials. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next is the Employee Retirement Trust financial statement. I don't know if you got a comment on that, Jason, or...
Excuse me. The only comment I would have is that as you're reviewing the report, I would direct your attention to the management discussion and analysis section, which of course starts on page 1. There's a good summary in there of the financial position and the funding ratio based on the new accounting rules. And again, just as a reminder, this compares previous fiscal year to current fiscal year through the 9 months ending March 31st.
All right. Any questions? Then I'd have a motion to approve the Retirement Trust financial statement.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Program reports. Our first program report will be the streetcar report.
Good morning.
Morning.
How's everyone? I will give the streetcar report. So operations, been a busy month for May, operations-wise. We held several meetings of our follow-up negotiations with Herzog. You can see there, May 2nd, 4th, 9th, 11th. Most of May we were meeting. Also during May, staff went down to Dallas, went to DART. We went down there for several reasons. One of the reasons was to inspect the Brookville Liberty streetcar. Dallas was one of the first ones, or the first one to receive the Liberty streetcar. So we went down to inspect the streetcar, check the quality of the streetcar, and then we were also there to build relationships with Dallas. They have the streetcar, we're going to have the same streetcar, so we want to be able to build that relationship with them and be able to communicate with them about the streetcar. And then we also continue our developing the rail activation plan with our consultants, and also maps, and also our integrated testing plan. And now that Herzog is part of the team, they'll become part of the group of developing that also. And then we also, Jason and I, we went to Landover, Maryland, part of the FTA training. We were part of the Effectively Managing Transit Emergencies training course. We were there from Sunday to Thursday. It's a great course. It's all-day class. One of the interesting things, the course was held at WMATA. They're the authority over the passenger rail there. One of the cool things that they had there for their safety training is they had this rollover car that you see in the top picture there. It's on a set of rollers that are embedded in the concrete, and they're able to twist that commuter rail. They can spin it all the way around if they need to, and that allows fire, life safety training in that vehicle to train for a rollover incident. And then the bottom picture there is our training during class, where we were doing emergency exercises and training for emergency exercises. Next slide is an update on mainline track construction. You can see on the map there, there's several different construction zones throughout the city along the streetcar route. On the right is a list of those construction zones and their estimated construction dates. We are looking at setting up our first platform along Joe Carter there. They're installing rail on Reno. They're also doing track demolition and rail installation and utility work on Sheridan, doing the same thing on Robinson utility work. They've installed a large portion of track on South Hudson, doing utility work on North Hudson, and then utility work up on 10th Street around near the roundabout. Update on storage and maintenance facility, interior mechanical, electrical, plumbing, sheetrock work continues. There was a slight delay on the track installation for the storage and maintenance facility. There was a back order on the boot that goes around the track. They've received that now, and they plan on installing the track here in the next week or so. And our completion date for the storage and maintenance facility is still October 26th of 2017, just in time to receive the streetcars. And this is a picture to show some progress. The top picture was May 3rd. The bottom picture was yesterday. You can see closest to us in the picture on the bottom, they're starting to do the formwork for the trash enclosures. They got some more soffit installed, and in the picture you can see that they've installed some plastic sheathing around the office area. So what happened there was a delay in receiving the metal material for the outside of the building, so they installed this plastic to be able to stay on schedule and be able to install the sheetrock and the mechanical, electrical, plumbing fixtures to be able to finish up their rough end. Vehicle procurement, things are moving great there. There was that slight delay with the ABB propulsion equipment, which pushed the streetcar delivery schedule completion to be in July, and then actually receive the streetcars in October. You can see here that most of our 6 vehicles are under construction. Our vehicle number 5 is completely into the process now. It's in various stages of framing. So things are going well there. And then road procurement, the schedule hasn't changed since last time. We're expecting our next delivery in July, and that's our boulevard track work, which will allow us to get in and finish up that boulevard track work before ODOT comes in and starts their construction. So, super short.
Yeah, when you were in Dallas, did you kind of get an update on their system, how long it's been in operation, and kind of what how many people they're carrying? Because I was there last weekend, it looked like one I saw was like 4 cars long, I think.
Right, so that's their commuter rail, their streetcar system. It's been in operation for a little over a year now. I would say that they're not quite where they'd like to be. Their ridership isn't quite where they'd like it to be, but they're working on improving that.
Where does it run? Do you know the rail?
I don't remember the exact area, but it's not a very long route. It goes down one street, makes a turn, and then stops and then comes back. It's nothing compared to ours. It's about half the size of ours.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Long-range plan report.
Good morning. It's great to have a chance to present to you about some long-range planning activities. This will be the first report since March. I have 4 different topics I want to mention. One is about the, next slide please, about the Northwest Multimodal Transportation Corridor Concept Plan. The second is about some partnership work we're doing in Northeast Oklahoma City. Third, about transit-oriented development. And then finally finish up with a few words about some grant opportunities that we're pursuing. Okay. The Northwest Multimodal Transportation Corridor Concept Plan has been gaining some attention locally and even nationally. We're pleased to say that about every other year, the Transportation Excellence Awards are presented, and they reward about 10 every 2 years. And this particular concept plan was actually one of the recipients this year. And we like to think that even though we nominated it last summer, that it kind of fits with the different organizational values that we adhere to, and also our interest in partnering. Because when we started this process back in 2015, it was part of that health and planning corridor beta test, and that was something that we worked with the Oklahoma City Planning Department, with ACOG, and the Oklahoma City County Health Department. We took the lead, but really we had some good partners there. And this is an interesting concept plan because it's about more than just bus rapid transit going out Classen and the Northwest Expressway. It's also about how you get pedestrians and bicyclists across 6 lanes of traffic, okay? Has to be done in order to have transit customers, but it definitely benefits all those other folks who want to get across the corridor as well. And it has some concepts in there for motorists as well. So, we're pleased that gained a little bit of attention. And this idea of Northwest Bus Rapid Transit, that's really kind of the center of that, also gained some local recognition at the Chamber of Commerce's Transit Forum lunch about a month ago that Mr. Fairbrush presented at. A lot of talk about different regional transit initiatives, but Northwest BRT was among them. And then, as you all remember, there was a benefit cost analysis, a BCA, that you all approved funding for earlier this year. And we don't have all the results yet, but we hope to be able to provide a summer presentation of what those were. And so we're looking forward to the prospect of that. So let me say, I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about Northeast Oklahoma City. If you would go to the next slide. And just say that there's a group in Northeast Oklahoma City called Northeast OKC Revitalization Incorporated. And this nonprofit is one that's working with a lot of community groups. And they put on basically a street festival back on May the 6th, where they closed about 2 blocks of Northeast 23rd Street, about halfway between Martin Luther King and Kelly. And in Embark's case, we had a bus there on static display and showed a lot of people about our buses as well as our other types of services for older adults and the like. And it was a great street festival, but that same group has an offshoot, kind of a subcommittee working on non-emergency medical transportation. What they're working on is some way to try to provide some curb-to-curb trips, and we'd help them troubleshoot a grant for non-emergency medical trips of a type that really we don't really provide. It would be a good complement to the types of services that we provide. And then finally, in the lower left, you see a little bit of information about the old Page Woodson School, which also has been known as Douglas High School at times during its history. We'd reached out to them, to Ron Bradshaw with Colony Developers back in, I guess, fall of 2013 as we were doing some economic development planning related to the prospect of streetcar going to the Health Science Center. And I think they had just bought the building back in the fall of 2013. Well, now they've reached back out to us. They're interested in trying to find a way to make public transportation more of a factor in what makes that effective. So let me move to the next slide because it kind of relates to that. We've talked a little bit about transit-oriented development, TOD, in the past. And really, this Page Woodson development is going to be about 150 units of affordable housing that's really coming online this month. They start leasing, I guess, this week or next week. And when I say affordable housing, not public housing, not Section 8, but basically lower-income people who are working. And the thing is it's the development's going to be right along 4th Street, and the Page Woodson High School and the new building they built is about a little over a block to the north as part of that development. And so it really represents kind of a good example of basically how development and transit and ridership can really work together. So, we're excited about staying in close contact with them. Last month in Washington, D.C., there was a conference called the Locust Conference, which basically is about transit-oriented development. We had a chance to present a little bit about development opportunities adjacent to streetcar. But what I thought was kind of interesting about the conference is they confirmed what we've understood for quite a while, and that is that even with the bus, you can help spark and be a part of transit-oriented development. They showed us some interesting developments. We went out and toured some areas where basically it was the bus or bus rapid transit that was a big part in helping to drive development and have great livability. So, just a word about that. Then let me finish up with my last little comments about grant applications. Jeannie Smith apparently has done a good job of putting together a TAP grant application to try to add some Spokies kiosks. We'll see how, the results of that go. But this month, we're in the process of working on what's called a low-no bus emission grant program. So far the idea is to apply for 2 buses that aren't diesel or CNG or even a hybrid, but electric battery-powered buses. And, it's going to be a pretty competitive grant situation. We're going to put our best foot forward and see how that goes and try to apply for some electric buses. And then, I mentioned a moment ago about that benefit cost analysis. Well, a BCA is really a required step if you want to pursue federal Tiger capital grant funding. And so, if there is a round later this year, a lot of people suspect there will be, and if the city of Cotpa wants to apply for one, then at least in terms of a BRT project, we will have done that one really important technical step. So with that, hey, I'm glad to answer any questions you might have, and thank you for the opportunity to present.
Laura?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. So I'm really glad that you came back around to the BCA for the BRT, because I have a question. And I do think this is great that we're preparing with the BCA. Is there anything else that we need to do as a prerequisite for that Tiger grant application? Or even not just as a prerequisite, but as something desirable to advance the cause for that funding?
Right. Well, aside from good partnership letters and being able to demonstrate local match, a technical thing that they're going to want to make sure that we're ready for is environmental clearance, federal environmental clearance, NEPA. And if it's like past rounds have been, you don't actually have to have achieved your NEPA conclusion, okay? You didn't have to finish NEPA, but you have to show that basically you've started it and that you will be able to finish within a year. And in order to do an environmental assessment, let's say, it's quite a bit more expensive than doing the benefit cost analysis, but that's probably something that they will want us to do. So passing through NEPA is important.
Can it be done in pieces?
What?
Can it be done in pieces? Can you do half a class in and then the other half a class in part of Northwest Expressway, or does it all have to be done in one?
It has to be done for the segment for which you want to apply for, so really you probably need to do the process all the way out to, say, Meridian, or as the BCA Scenario 2 shows, all the way out to Council Road. Probably need to do all of it.
Two questions. What discussion on the Page Woodson for providing any service around there? I mean, you say you've talked to the developers, and I know I'm going to get a question on it, so
Okay. Well, okay. The Route 22 goes by there now. That's
Okay.
22 goes to the zoo, always easy to remember. It goes out 4th and then at Martin Luther King. But, because we are more than just a big bus, we have a wide range of senior van services, and of these 150 units, about 40 or 50 will be for lower-income seniors, and they might very well benefit from STEP and congregate meal and that sort of service and other things that we provide. And so they want to make their residents aware of these kinds of opportunities, okay, so that it's not so much that we're providing a new service, just making sure they really know what we're doing. I think the goal is try to establish a rider culture there among those residents in whatever, month one, so.
And
does that kind of help?
And when Larry mentions, working with them, I mean, we've had meetings. Larry, Chip, Marilyn, staff has all had meetings about the different services we can provide, and we're also looking at what we can do, if anything, in terms of improving accessibility to just a traditional bus stop. So.
Then, what's your projection on the bus rapid transit? I mean, when do you think we could see that at the Northwest Highway?
A lot of cities do them in just a few short years, I mean, much faster than streetcar, okay, because there's a lot less involved. But, that's so hard to say, and really, even if you can build it, it's got to be something that, that you feel like you can afford to actually operate. So there's a few things there to keep in mind.
Do we have to do the environmental assessment before you do a Tiger grant application?
If it's like it was in the past, no.
But the reality is, it's tens of millions of dollars of local match.
Okay. Most Tiger grants are for well under $25 million. A lot of times they're just $5 million, or I think in the case of our Santa Fe depot, $12 million. So
With an 80-20?
I'm sorry?
With an 80-20 ratio?
At least, usually, and I think this is the way you succeed, is if you propose 70%, 30% local match, something higher, the overmatch always helps.
So really, at a minimum, 30% of $5 million.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Larry, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to receive our program reports? Oh, we got one more, excuse me, marketing, I'm sorry. Oh, my gosh.
I can sit down if you'd like. Well, I appreciate the chance to speak with you and just share. I have just a couple of things. The first thing is something Larry had already mentioned, just one of the events that we participated in. This is the second year of the event, our first year to participate. It was a great opportunity to speak to hundreds about our services. Many of them have already used it. It's the next slide. Can't ever pass up the puppy dog picture. The sunglasses are always also a favorite and came in very handy that day. One of the other offshoots of that was that we had an opportunity. We were stationed right next to a fire department. We had a good opportunity. I think Kevin and Eugene showed them a lot of the finer points of the new CNG buses, some different things that make them a little more special than others. So it was a good time also, and just that we were able to talk with a few of our colleagues in another department and share some of the information. They were very interested in and very impressed with the various attributes of it. And of course, we always appreciate their support when we ever have to call on them. Wanted to update you on a program that we've been focusing a little more on over the last few years. And we've had a lot of growth in that program. The Road Scholars program is a free field trip program. Am I clicking that? Sorry about that. The Road Scholars program, again, is a free field trip program that allows groups to take educational field trips at no cost using our existing scheduled service. It's not competing in a charter type of way, but they're using our existing service. One example of that was Trustee Cooper using that last month, and you saw all the students that we were able to accommodate and bring to a day here at the City Hall. And we primarily have seen it used mostly by just our secondary schools, and we continue to see a lot of interest in it. For example, in 2015, we had 22 trip requests. We're not always able to accommodate every trip request, maybe due to size, or we already had another trip there. But a lot of times, sometimes their plans change and they cancel. So we filled 19 of those 22 in FY15. And then in 16, we had 20. We were able to accommodate all of those. In FY17, though, we had 88 trip requests, and we completed 65 of those. Now, what's interesting about that is the number of students that then come into play there. You'll see on the graph there just the number of students, and that includes the staff and any volunteers who were chaperoning that day. And you'll see the growth in the number that we carried just through this program alone. So the trips provided, that for FY16, 16 was about a 5% growth over the year before. This year we experienced a 225% growth with the number of trips that we provided compared to FY16. One of the things that we want to continue to do is make students aware of, our teachers and them and schools aware of this, because it's such an important resource in helping them. It's another way we're partnering with the school system to provide a much needed service. Many classrooms, we've been told, would not be able to take their field trips due to budget constraints. They have to pay for their bus as part of their budget. The teacher has to figure that if they're going to make a field trip. So this is one more area in which we're providing a need where they have a demand. We want to continue to promote this. It just, I think, furthers that conversation we've previously had about introducing a younger audience to public transportation at a much younger age and helping them to overcome any of the obstacles or stigmas that they might have. Part of the program is, again, we issue a pass with every aspect of that we send out. Again, we want the student to swipe the pass. We want them to learn how to do all of those things to make this learning and this investment, as much of a learning opportunity as possible.
I was going to mention we also have a great video.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
we have a great video that promotes that, and we have had that shared through the school system out to many of the classrooms, and so the teachers and administrators are aware of it. We just expect that to this program to continue to grow, especially in the climate, with the budget climate that the school is in. We anticipate that they'll continue to need this more and more.
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman. Michael, the trips that were turned down, was that just because you were booked up on that day? I mean, when you talk about still growing the program, I'm assuming that we didn't turn down trips because we didn't have the resources to provide that many trips.
Correct.
It's just not on those days.
Correct. Sometimes they may want to take an entire grade at one time. And so we wouldn't necessarily, because we're operating with our regular service, we may already have people on the buses, and so, that an entire grade could, be upwards of 100 students plus staff and all of the chaperones. So what we try to do then is to break up their trip into individual smaller trips and schedule them with subsequent buses, so they come in between. If we've had a really large trip like that, we've even been known to put out a tripper bus to help make sure that class gets where they need to go. Sometimes they fall through just simply because of scheduling. They had something else come up. We've encountered that many times. They have some other requirement that they're having to fill, or some authorization with the school may have gotten turned down, and so they can't make their trip. Most of the time, they're canceling the trip with us. But we begin the planning process and walk them all the way through it up until, and sometimes we just find out the week or so before.
We've had some trips just recently canceled because of weather.
Weather makes an impact as well.
So it happened.
Yeah, and, a couple of things on that. One, my school, we had to cancel a trip because the entire month of May is focused, or not May, the entire month of May is focused on getting out of school for the summer. The entire month of April is focused on testing. And so we had originally planned some campus visits, and our principal, I think probably rightly said, no, the kids need to be in school that day. Also just want to take the time to say thank you to everyone on the board who welcomed Jefferson Middle School students here last month. They didn't stop talking about it. It just really warmed my heart, and I'm so happy that this program is growing. And you're exactly right. These are kids who, because of the budget cuts that they're facing, and I know we're also in a time of budget cuts here, but because of those budget cuts, they can't afford those buses that cost a few $100s to get them out of the school for a day. The second thing I was going to say, though, is that, the reason why I think this program is so vital right now is we have the Teacher of the Year at the national level. She's telling us right now that grades aren't the only thing that matter. They're important, but she and college admissions people are telling us that what really matters is that kids are participating in their community. And that's what college application those boards are looking for. And so we as a board in Embark, we are really helping by connecting our students to the community and connecting with our students. So I just want to say again, thank you for this opportunity for the program.
Well, I hope we didn't embarrass any of your students when we got them up here to speak. I thought the interaction was great, and and I know it's hard for them, but it's probably good for them to get up here and speak and do.
Absolutely, and to that point, I mean, that's a really great point, Mr. Chairman. When they come up here and ask those sort of critical thinking questions, that's what my college prep program is asking them to do. So that was an exercise in that day. And don't you worry, teenagers don't embarrass. They're only embarrassed by the adults.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not an adult then? No, thank you. Okay. All right. Michael, anything else?
Yeah, I just want to share a little update on what we're doing with the streetcar work. Before you hear is just one of 5 renderings that we are working on to help help the community visualize what these streetcar platforms and the stops and the interaction with traffic and each of the districts would be like. We think these are going to be very helpful in just helping the general public broaden their awareness of not only the project, but what to expect with it, especially as this stuff starts coming out of the ground in the sense of construction. I know the platform at the ballpark that's on schedule this summer to be completed pretty soon, so that'll be one of the first, and we'll just continue to see those crop up. But this is just one of those, and we're also in the development phase for some short video animations. And again, we're just getting started with those, but what we're aiming to do here is to have several videos to help us communicate messages on topics such as bicycle safety, pedestrian safety, how we can share the road with one another, whether you're driving, riding your bike, or if you're in the streetcar, parking along the streetcar line, as well as how to ride. That'll be a very important one. And then we also want to draw some awareness to making connections with the Embark bus system. And so we'll be trying to communicate those through very short animated videos that can be shared not only on social media, but also could be placed on some paid promotion. So those are the major updates I had for you. I just wanted to also mention real quick that we've got 2 public meetings taking place in the month of June for the proposed fare increase on the Embark Plus Zone 2 ADA service. That first meeting is Wednesday, June 7th, and it will take place from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Downtown Transit Center. And then we'll have a second meeting on Friday, June 9th, from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., and that'll take place at the Ron Norick Library downtown here in Classroom A. And again, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
That's not just the Zone 2 fare increase, that's the fare change for
Yes,
Downtown
thank
Discovery
you.
also.
Yeah, it's also for the Downtown Discovery as
Right.
well. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, Michael? All right. Well, thank you. Now I have a motion to receive our program reports. All in favor?
Chairman Kaufman, could we get a vote on 6A? I don't think we got all the votes recorded correctly. It was a streetcar. We took a yay, but we didn't ask for any nays.
Okay.
So if we could record the votes correctly.
Okay. Were there any nays? Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other items from the trustees before we go into executive session? All right. So right, do I have a motion to approve item C under the individual consideration?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. We're adjourned for the,
Items from the trustees?
well, I thought we did that earlier, but if we still,
Oh, okay.
but if there are any items from the trustees, I'll be happy to